Captain America and his ragtag team of Avengers have been abducted by the vampire-run Hell Carrier. On it, they learn that old school bad guy and big loser Baron Blood, who is a Nazi vampire, has been scooping up civilians from New York. He plans to hole up with his army, waiting for this whole blot out the sun thing that Blade is up to play out, and then he'll try to take over the world because he's a bad guy. Naturally, the Avengers aren't cool with this. While Hercules, Quicksilver, Hazmat, and Hawkeye saved the civilians, Cap fought Baron Blood. Our last issue ended with the realization that Blood had more imprisoned humans on board the Hell Carrier than had eject pods, and a bigger army than previously thought as well. Captain America got to the helm of the carrier, and he pulled up. Everyone is thrown by this, but the Avengers know to trust Captain America. His plan is a simple one. They're fighting vampires, so they need some sunlight. He forces the helicarrier up through the clouds and dark force sky covering, and into that beautiful sun, baby. He tells the Avengers about this, puts the ship on autopilot, and then he prepares to go another round with Baron Blood. After all, he can do this all day. The Avengers start laying into the vampires. Hercules is literally just throwing them out of a hatch, laughing the entire time. Hawkeye shatters the painted-over windows, frying even more of them. Hazmat is blasting them with radiation. Quicksilver is the only one who is just watching, because he's noticed that the vampires are all headed in the same direction. They've got some kind of a plan for this. He reports this to Captain America over his Avengers Identicard, who is still fighting, and Cap tells him to stop the vampires. Pietro is the biggest pain in the neck that he has ever known, and Cap says that with all the love he has for Pietro. So go be the vampire's neck pain, dude! Cap then returns his attention to Blood, asking him what his soldiers are doing. Baron Blood, being an arrogant piece of work, gladly expounds on what his soldiers are doing. If this ship is going to be lost, well, they might as well make losing it worth it. Killing Captain America and a team of Avengers isn't a bad use for such a magnificent craft. None of these Avengers can fly, can they? Cap ignores the implied threat, asking about his own men. They're gonna die too, right? And Blood knows that they'll die. In fact, he's proud of it. Quote, "There has not, nor will there ever be, a shortage of credulous fools waiting to step in line." End quote. Quicksilver got all that, and so he divides their forces. Hercules and Hazmat will keep killing the vampires, but before he can tell Hawkeye what she's going to do, she says that she is coming with him. She knows the general layout of the helicarrier, he doesn't. So he scoops her up, tells her to hold her breath, and then they're off. Hercules and Hazmat have a cute moment of bonding, referencing the last time that they were in the same room together, and it's a good use of history. I'll cover more of it later. It's not overall important to the story, it's just a nice character moment. Quicksilver and Hawkeye then reach the helicarrier's reactor, but the door is sealed, of course. Pietro calls the forces inside over an intercom and tells them how desperate their situation is. You should know by now, Hercules and Hazmat are killing vampires all day. The unstoppable Captain America is smashing his shield into Baron Blood's face. You know how this ends. Let's just stop playing games. The vampires inside remain confident that even Captain America can't survive a fall from this height, and Quicksilver reminds them that he did so once before, referencing his rocket ride that he took, where the rocket exploded, he fell from a great height into the North Atlantic Ocean and then froze. The vampires inside then play the arrogant card instead. They're willing to die for this cause. They'll become martyrs, fighting for the noblest of causes. Baron Blood will list them himself on the rolls of heroes when vampires rule the day. Quicksilver then holds up his Avengers communications card and plays the recording of Baron Blood, saying that he would gladly sacrifice his own men. The vampires ask Pietro for his word that if they open this door, he'll let them live. Alright, he gives it. The vampires then run out. Hawkeye moves inside the reactor to keep the ship from going kablooey, and Quicksilver cuts the fleeing vampires off. He brandishes his stakes at them. "But you said that you would let us live!" one of them cries out. Quicksilver smiles. First off, you're all vampires, so you're already dead. As for breaking my own word, well, I've done worse. And I'm very upset about my sister, who is the Scarlet Witch, who you might recall was captured by Blade over in the Made Blood Hunt series. Team H now makes their way to Captain America, backing him up in his fight with Baron Blood. He remains foolishly confident that he can still win the day, but he can't. They're the Avengers, Captain America says. They don't quit until the job is done. Baron Blood then dives for a window, promising to keep this dance going. Cap throws his shield, but he misses and curses. He had forgotten in all the action that this was his silvered shield, established back in issue 14, and he isn't used to its flight pattern. Quicksilver now arrives. Captain America admonishes him for arriving too late to stop the Baron, but Pietro was trained by Cap since back when he was, a teenage supervillain. He knows how to plan ahead, and he passed that lesson on. The issue ends with Hawkeye getting a bead on the gliding form of Baron Blood. She pulls an arrow taut, and then the issue ends. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown's coverage of Blood Hunt, Episode 19, The Avengers Don't Quit. Author Jed MacKay has really killed these 3 Avenger tie-in issues. No, they don't affect the story of Blood Hunt. No, they're not terribly deep. Where Doctor Strange's tie-ins were pure horror story, exploring the idea of stories as reality, these Avengers issues are much more of a summer blockbuster of a story. They're filled with cool moments for each member of the team, they're all confident, they're all badass, and they handle these Nazi vampires with a practiced, cool ease that belies experienced superheroes fighting essentially cannon fodder enemies. Once again, MacKay manages to impress me with an easy solution. If the helicarrier has too many vampires on it, just take it where the sun does shine, and thin those numbers out a little bit. Just drive the helicarrier up above the Dark Force. It's so simple! And I appreciate those kinds of ideas. The things that are so simple you don't think of them, that's the kind of stuff I like to read. Add on top of that the moments where you've got Hercules just throwing vampires out of the helicarrier to kill them, that's great. The moment where Quicksilver and Hawkeye reach the reactor door, he power slides on the floor, staking one of the vampires as he does so, like a rock star. Quicksilver's a badass, and he knows it here. And when he goes back on his word at the end, promising the vampires that he'll let them live, and then he goes and kills them, perfectly Quicksilver, 100% Quicksilver. Not only does he weasel word around having given them his word, but he then punctuates the idea with 2 concepts. 1, he's done way worse, and 2, he's pissed off about his sister. Both of these things are true, and I think that it perfectly demonstrates the kind of character that Pietro is, and the kind of character he can be when he's written really well. The same honestly goes for Captain America, who continues to just play with Baron Blood like he's a well-trained dog. Cap's continued confidence is still in place, and I love every second of it. At the start of this issue, after he puts on the autopilot, the Baron says something like, sunlight can't hurt me, right? Trying to, bring Steve's spirits down because his sunlight move ultimately isn't going to affect him. And instead of being down about it, Steve just closes his fists. And he says that hurting Baron Blood is his job. It's so cool. It's just, again, it's a form of confidence you don't typically see in Captain America, and I really am enjoying it here. I don't think I would like it all the time, don't get me wrong, but right here in this moment with this story, especially compared to the much more horror-leaning stuff you're getting in the other tie-ins, I think it's great. We do get an extended scene with Hercules and Hazmat that I've got some mixed feelings about. Back when Hazmat was a student at the Avengers Academy, in the comic which shared the same name, Hercules did a class on Olympic-style wrestling, and of course he thought classical Olympic-style wrestling, so he was nude. Obviously, this was played for laughs then, and the same is true now in this particular scene, but MacKay also uses the moment to show how far the characters have come since that moment. Hercules is fully dressed, and Hazmat has graduated from the academy. She's an Avenger now, right? However, this moment is pretty problematic in today's culture. Hazmat clearly feels like the youngest member of the team here, even if you compared her to Kate Bishop as Hawkeye. Hercules, as a guy, is thousands of years old, so displaying everything that Zeus gave him to her back when she was potentially even younger feels noticeably gross. Thankfully, that isn't something that happened here, but it is one of those, oh, this joke was actually kind of gross the first time that it happened. Why are we bringing it up again kind of things? Hazmat does call Hercules a perv when she reminds him of it, and he clearly doesn't even remember her at first. Like, he doesn't remember this is a thing that happened. For her, it was one of the perviest moments of her life. For Hercules, it was just a Tuesday. That said, I do think that it is nice to see the two of them address it and basically get over it. They've got bigger concerns, like vampires and helping Captain America and Nazis, and so they focus on that instead. Which, for the most part, is kind of thematically what these issues have done. This is a team that has almost no history working together, made of wildly different generations of heroes with incredibly different powers, and yet, despite all of that, they come together to save the day. Because that's what heroes do. That's what America does. It's one of the things I love about this stuff. I even love the moment when Cap throws his shield after the Baron and misses him, which is a pretty rare thing to happen, but McKay set up this idea back in issue 14, our first tie-in issue, when Quicksilver commented that he noticed Cap's shield's flying a little wobbly. Cap explained back then that it's because it's a silver shield in order to fight vampires, and that weight is off. McKay set up this miss that happened here 2 months ago. That's smart plotting, and I love that. He knew what he was doing long term here, and I just really appreciate that. On the other hand, I do have my biggest personal complaint about this issue, and that's the ending. Baron Blood escapes, except for Hawkeye drawing a bead on him, and then we cut. And of course, author Jed MacKay can't really kill Baron Blood, because that's just not how comics work. Even if Blood was killed here, some other author would just find a way to bring him back because they really like him. Blech. I understand from a meta standpoint why Baron Blood survives the issue. But then, don't give me this ending. Kate Bishop is a good enough shot that I believe that if she was aiming at Baron Blood and she had an arrow pulled and he was within range, and given that she's been killing vampires left and right throughout this entire event, there is no reason to think she would not shoot him right then and there and kill him. Shoot the guy and just be done with it, right? So that kind of ends the issue with a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. Artist C.F. Villa's line work is perhaps the loosest and most sketchy that it has been this entire arc, and I get the feeling that it might be a little hit or miss for people because of it. For the most part, I like the style here. It feels very animated, very action-packed, and given that McKay keeps things pretty fun and dynamic in the story, I think that it works well fitting the tone. It does kind of undercut some of the badass moments a little bit, as there just isn't enough emotional weight behind the artwork for my tastes, but overall, I think that it works well. Especially for like a big character like Hercules who's throwing dudes around, or Hazmat when she's doing energy blasts, that energy looks really fluid and lively, or the moments where Quicksilver's speeding around. Again, his power slide, one of my favorite single images in the issue. These characters under this artist all work incredibly well for me. There's even another little moment that I liked. When Quicksilver asks Hawkeye to secure the reactor, and we get a shot of her just staring at him, and she's got this like great deadpan, like One Punch Man style expression on. Quicksilver thinks that he's all that for having gotten these vampires out of the reactor, and it's clear that she isn't impressed by him. Those little moments of personality are great, and I love that kind of stuff. Overall, these Avengers tie-ins issues were fun, loose, they're just a good time. For as dramatic as a lot of the other tie-ins have been, or as heavy as Blood Hunt itself has been, these issues are just a blast. A lot of people have been considering this arc as the launching point for the upcoming Avengers Assemble miniseries, and if it was being written by Jed MacKay, I would probably check it out based on the strength of these 3 issues alone. Unfortunately for me, it isn't. It's being written by author Steve Orlando, who is a good author, don't get me wrong. I've been enjoying Orlando's run on The Scarlet Witch over the past couple of years, and his series of 2099 miniseries, but man, like, McKay just nailed the tone of this story for me. We had action, we had a little bit of drama, just enough that it was there. You've got well-written characters, a good sense of history. These might not be like world-changing comics, but I do think that they're good, fun superhero comics. This is kind of what I want from a superhero book. Next episode, we will be closing out the Dracula miniseries. Varney tempts Brielle to join his side and give up on her father, and after all, Brielle has already decided that she's not a hero. Dracula, meanwhile, has to keep her safe from wave after wave of vampire attack. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.